Hi guys, I'm new. The anime recap I want to share today is Seirei Gensouki, Spirit Chronicles. The male protagonist's name is Ryo, and he is the most miserable male protagonist I have ever seen. He has an accident while he is in the bus and is reincarnated into another world, becomes an orphan in a slum, and is rejected by everyone. In the next second, he encounters the gangsters and almost dies. Even so, his tragedy is not over. He ventures to save the princess but is mistaken for a kidnapper and sent to prison, where he is taught a lesson. What other misfortunes will Ryo encounter in another world? Whether his lady luck will come? Let's wait and see. The story begins when Ryo reincarnates into another world in an accident and becomes a poor orphan in a slum. He lives in a dilapidated house with gangsters for years, doing odd jobs to make ends meet. Today, Ryo learns that the gangsters have received a secret commission to transport a sack containing living people. Ryo does not participate in their actions because he remembers his mom telling him to be a man of integrity when his mother was still alive. Ryo's mother also said that her family came from another country, so their hair color was different from the people around them. Ryo has always wanted to leave the slum and find his hometown, as his mother said. Fate soon gives him a chance to get out of the slum. On this day, Ryo meets a group of noble girls who are inquiring about the whereabouts of a purple-haired girl. One of them, a girl named Celia, is a magician who is using magic to look for the purple-haired girl. When Celia uses magic, magic comes out from Ryo's body. The girls realize that Ryo is a man with a talent for being a magician. Unfortunately, they don't have time to pay attention to Ryo now, and they leave in a hurry to learn that he hasn't seen the purple-haired girl. At this time, Ryo does not know that there is a mysterious magic in his body, which has been triggered by Celia, and his life is about to change. When Ryo returns to the broken house, he is surprised to find that all the gangsters have been killed by an assassin. Apparently, the assassin does not want to let Ryo go. When Ryo is about to die, he vaguely sees an elf teaching him to use a mysterious power. Ryo manipulates this force according to the elf's instructions and successfully knocks the assassin unconscious. Ryo looks around and finds no trace of the purple-haired girl, only hears a voice coming from the sack. Ryo opens the sack, and inside is a purple-haired girl. The girl is frightened by the corpses around her and faints as soon as she says her name, Flora, and tries to ask Ryo for help. Apparently, the assassin and the gangsters clash when they fight for Flora, which means that Flora's status must be very noble, and she should be the target of the noble girls. Ryo kindly finds the noble girls and tries to hand Flora over to them, but is mistaken for the criminal who captures Flora and is insulted by Flora's sister, Christina. Ryo feels aggrieved and would rather be jailed by Christina than explain. He is harshly interrogated in prison, but he refuses to say anything. It isn't until Flora wakes up and explains everything that the misunderstanding is finally solved. Ryo is brought to the palace by Flora and Christina and learns that Flora and Christina are the princesses of the country. When the king learns what has happened, he sends Ryo to a noble school in order to thank him. Most of the nobles in the noble school look down on Ryo, who was born a commoner, and often humiliate him. Apart from Flora, the only one in the school who is friendly to Ryo is Celia. Celia is a magical genius who is only 12 years old and has become a magic teacher at school. Celia is grateful to Ryo for helping to rescue Flora, often tutoring him alone after class as an appreciation. They forge a deep friendship over time, and Celia becomes Ryo's only friend in the world. Ryo never forgets his dream of finding his hometown, and he grasps the opportunity to study at an aristocratic school in order to gain the ability to navigate this world. With the knowledge he acquired in his previous life and Celia's patient tutoring, he achieves first place in his grade on the final exam of the first semester. Although many nobles are jealous of his excellence, Ryo never cares. He just wants to complete his study in peace. Ryo has spent 5 years in the noble school, and he and Celia gradually fall in love with each other. Recently, Ryo will compete with the Knight Charles as a student representative, and Celia looks forward to seeing Ryo's heroism in this competition. She believes Ryo can definitely conquer the nobles who look down on him with his outstanding performance. Based on experience, knights don't use their full strength to fight students, but Charles is an exception. He was in charge of interrogating Ryo 5 years ago and was demoted for being too cruel. Charles believes that Ryo causes him to demote and wants to teach Ryo a lesson in this competition, but he is defeated by Ryo with mysterious power. Ryo receives cheers from the audience, and Charles hates Ryo even more because he has made fool of himself in public by Ryo. He desperately finds his companion, Rice, to help him take revenge on Ryo. They plan to attack Ryo during student training in the near future, and since Charles is famous and easily recognized, they decide that Rice will carry out the plan. The training takes place outdoors and is attended only by students in Ryo's grade. Rice sends a large number of goblins and beastkins to attack Ryo, but Ryo is too powerful, and these monsters cannot threaten him. Unexpectedly, the students do not know that the aim is Ryo and fall into a panic. A silver-haired boy accidentally knocks Flora off a cliff during his escape. Before he can think, Ryo rushes off the cliff, pushes Flora back to safety, and falls off the cliff. Ryo is protected by the powers bestowed by the elf and is completely unharmed. Ryo has never seen this power in anyone else. It is different from ordinary magic. He decides to hide the secret that he has mysterious powers and not return to the student group for the time being. Ryo sneaks up not far from the students to think about his next plan. Ryo notices that the students have defeated all the monsters and are fighting over him in order to pass the buck. The silver-haired boy lies that he was pushed by Ryo before hitting Flora, indicating that Ryo deserves to fall off the cliff. Most of the nobles have already despised Ryo, and they all chime in with the silver-haired boy. Even if Flora wants to speak for Ryo, it is useless, because during this time the king's power has been in decline and she lacks discourse power among the students. The other students don't care about Ryo's fate, and Flora is left alone to find Ryo's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, she meets a fierce Minotaur on the way, but fortunately, Ryo shows up in time to help her kill Minotaur. At this time, the students are attracted by the sound of the fight. Flora sees that Ryo is actively hiding, understands that he does not want to be discovered, and does not reveal his whereabouts. After witnessing the altercation just now, Ryo realizes that his presence will only complicate the situation. He feels it is time for him to leave school and find his hometown. Ryo doesn't notice that all of his actions are secretly observed by Rice. Ryo decides to say goodbye to Celia before leaving school. After Celia hears Ryo's thoughts, in order not to waver him, she just says goodbye with a hug to him. It isn't until Ryo leaves that Celia cries uncontrollably, wondering if she and Ryo would ever get a chance to see each other again. By this time, Ryo has left the school and a crisis awaits him. After a long journey, Ryo arrives in a new country. He discovers that the place is full of earthly food and suspects that he is not the only earthling who has reincarnated to another world. Ryo inquires around here and learns that there are many black-haired people like him in the country, and he identifies it as his hometown. Based on the clues he has found, Ryo sets out to find his hometown. Ryo doesn't go far when he meets an unconscious beastkin girl on the outskirts. While Ryo is concerned to check on her situation, he is attacked by her. He notices that the girl's attacks are very fierce, and she is obviously a master. Ryo's reaction is very fast, not only dodging the girl's attacks, but also knocking her unconscious. Ryo looks closely at the girl and recognizes the slave collar around her neck, which slave owners often uses to manipulate slaves. Ryo uses magic to remove the collar and wakes her up. The girl cries out with excitement when she sees the collar around her neck being undone. She confesses to Ryo that her name is Latifa and that she was enslaved and tortured by Charles and forced to assassinate Ryo. Latifa feels that Ryo has helped her undo the collar and is a person she could rely on. Fearing that she would fall into Charles's hands again, Latifa asks to stay with Ryo, even willing to become Ryo's slave. This humble remark provokes Ryo's sympathy for Latifa, who he takes in without asking her to put the collar back on. Ryo has since taken Latifa and set out on the road to find his hometown. They support each other during this journey and often sleep together. That night, Ryo overhears Latifa talking in her sleep, saying that she is scared and wants to return to Tokyo. Ryo instantly realizes that Latifa comes from Earth like him and can't help but feel a sense of closeness to Latifa. Ryo has since treated Latifa as her sister and taken care of her at every turn. Together, they go through adventures, defeat many powerful enemies, and regard each other as their only reliance on this journey. They soon encounter unexpected troubles. That night Latifa can't sleep at all, and Ryo can only use magic to help her fall asleep. As soon as Latifa falls asleep, Ryo sees four beastkin girls patrolling the neighborhood and realizes that he and Latifa have strayed into beastkin's territory. Four beastkin girls find the sleeping Latifa in Ryo's tent and mistake Ryo for a slave owner. They use elven magic with stronger strength than Charles and join forces to knock Ryo unconscious. Ryo is in a coma and sees the elf girl again. When he wants to ask the identity of the elf girl, he suddenly wakes up and sees Latifa throwing herself into his arms worriedly. Ryo learns from Latifa's narrative that she is a resident of the area. Latifa has just woken up and explained the misunderstanding to the other girls, who feel guilty about Ryo, treat him as a guest of honor, and take him to meet with the village elders. These elders belong to different races, and the only thing they have in common is that they are sheltered by a green-haired elf, who is a high-level elf. The green-haired elf sees Rio and says surprisingly that there is a high-level elf sheltering him in Rio's body, entitling him to use elven magic. Green-haired elf admires Rio, as few humans are able to get shelter from high-level elves. She arranges for Rio to live in the village and teaches him how to use elven magic better. The experience during this time is wonderful for Rio, who is pursued by the girls due to the worship of the villagers. Rio also has a comfortable and pleasant life, and quickly improves his strength under the guidance of the green-haired elf. However, the danger has never gone. Rice has tracked down Rio's whereabouts and is plotting a new conspiracy. He infiltrates the nest of a group of wyverns and steals a wyvern's egg. Rice then commissions an adventurer to deliver the egg to Rio's village, to lure the wyverns to attack the village. The poor adventurer knows nothing about Rice's plan, thinking that he has received just an ordinary commission. As soon as the adventurer enters the village, they are overtaken by a large group of wyverns. Before he can react, he is killed by Rice with magic. The wyvern's egg shatters on the ground, angering all the wyverns. They launch indiscriminate attacks on the inhabitants of the village, who are no match for them at all and are in a desperate situation. At a critical juncture, Rio bravely stands up and fights the mighty leader of wyverns. Using the elven magic he learns from the green-haired elf, he easily kills the leader of the wyverns, causing the other wyverns to escape, and the crisis in the village is resolved. The villagers all breathe a sigh of relief. Only Rio is worried. He suspects that the adventurer comes to the elven village with wyvern's eggs. Under the instruction of Charles, Rio feels that if he continues to stay here, he will only implicate the villagers, and decides to leave here and continue to find his hometown. He tells Latifah about his decision. At this sad moment of parting, they confess to each other the secret that they are both earthlings, afraid that they would not have the opportunity to see each other again. At the moment of farewell, Latifah tells Rio to stay safe, and the other villagers give him a lot of equipment as gifts. These items include a magical item that helps Rio store a lot of items. In this way, Rio embarks on a new journey with everyone's blessings. After a long journey, he finally arrives at his destination and finds that the people here really have black hair. Rio is convinced that he has arrived in his hometown, and he searches for clues about his parents and finds his grandmother. Being an orphan for many years, Rio manages to find his only relative and just wants to stay with her for the rest of his life. Rio has since hidden his name and identity, settles in his grandmother's village, and lives a peaceful and happy life. The only thing Rio finds strange during this time is when he asks why his parents have left the village, and his grandmother remains silent. Rio understands that grandma must have a secret that cannot be revealed, and does not continue to ask. Until this day, an accident prompts Rio to find out the truth of the matter. A man in the village attacks the two girls at the midnight, but fortunately, Rio notices the sound in time and beats the man hard. His actions attract the attention of everyone in the village. Now Rio is only 15 years old, which shocks everyone in the village because he can gain an absolute advantage in fighting adult men. Rio's grandmother realizes that Rio is strong enough and feels it's time for him to know the secret about his parents. However, Rio's grandmother, who does not want to recall the painful past by herself, directs Rio to the country's capital, and she has arranged for someone to be responsible for telling Rio the truth. Rio arrives in the capital with doubts, and he is greeted by the most powerful samurai in the country, who is exactly the person arranged by Rio's grandmother. In the samurai's narrative, Rio learns about a past story. Rio's mother was the princess of the country, and Rio's father was her bodyguard. After they fell in love, the prince of another country took a fancy to Rio's mother and tried to snatch her, but was severely injured by Rio's father. Rio's parents had to elope to avoid the war. After the listening to samurai, Rio realizes that he is actually one of the royal family members. Before he calms down, he is led by the samurai to meet the king and princess of the country, who are Rio's grandfather and grandmother. Rio's conversation with them is destined to be inseparable from the death of his parents, and he has to talk about a past that he has been running away from. Rio's father died early, and his mother was killed by a man named Lucius when he was 5 years old. In the story, Rio's hatred for Lucius occupies his mind. Rio decides not to run away from the past and offers the king to seek revenge on Lucius, fearing that Rio would be in danger in his revenge. The king orders the samurai to test Rio's strength. Unexpectedly, the samurai exerts all his strength, but is defeated by Rio. The king is relieved and agrees to let Rio seek revenge on Lucius alone. Now, all Rio has to do is travel to the country where he first lived in this world to find Lucius's whereabouts. He first returns to the village where his grandmother lives, says goodbye solemnly to his grandmother, and then officially sets off. After months of trekking, Rio arrives at Latifah's village, intending to rest for the night. Now, it has been 2 years since Rio left the village. The villagers see him return and excitedly hold a lively welcome ceremony for him, and Rio has a happy evening. Something unexpected happens at this time. In the morning, when the girls enthusiastically call for Rio to get up, they are angry when they see a strange elf girl appear on his bed. Rio is puzzled and quickly asks the true identity of the elf, and learns that the other party is a high-level elf who has been residing in his body and does not know her origin nor her name. In order to easily address the elf, Rio names her Aishia and then takes her to the green-haired elf to confirm the situation. It's also the first time the green-haired elf meets a high-level elf without memory, and the green-haired elf tries to determine Aishia's identity by testing her abilities. The green-haired elf arranges for Aishia and Rio to fight, and is surprised to find that Aishia is proficient in all elven magics and has super fighting skills. The green-haired elf has never seen such an all-powerful high-level elf as Aishia, and in the end, they are unable to tell Aishia's identity. Rio doesn't go any further, and it is getting late. He plans to go to the bath to take a good rest, but Latifa also walks into the bath. Latifa takes the initiative to scrub Rio's body, trying to remember the feeling of being in close contact with Rio. After all, she doesn't know when her next meeting with Rio will be. The parting time always comes so quickly, and Rio leaves the village with Aishia the next morning. After using magic to fly for a while, they arrive at their destination. Before searching for Lucius' whereabouts, Rio wants to meet Celia, who has been separated from him for many years. Rio changes his appearance with special props and infiltrates the noble school, but he can't find Celia anywhere. In a panic, he uses magic to control a teacher's consciousness, and learns from the teacher that Celia will marry Charles tomorrow and become Charles's 7th wife. The news shocks Rio, who hurriedly asks the teacher for more details. It turns out that in the 4 years since Rio left, Charles's family has grown rapidly in power, and its influence has even surpassed the royal family. Recently, Celia's father is accused of treason, and in order to save himself, he has to choose to marry Celia to Charles and seek asylum. Rio's feelings are complicated. He doesn't expect Celia would be someone else's wife after 4 years apart. In order to confirm Celia's true feelings, he sneaks into Celia's room. Rio then dismantles his disguise so that Celia can recognize him. The 4-year reunion is not as passionate as expected, and the upcoming wedding makes the atmosphere between them a little awkward. Rio hesitates for a moment and asks Celia if she wants to marry Charles voluntarily. Celia, emotionally, asks Rio whether he is going to marry her if she doesn't marry Charles. Celia calms down after venting her emotions, claiming that she is just joking, and throws Rio out of the room on the grounds that the bride shouldn't see other men. Only then does Celia burst into tears sadly, and the only person she has always loved is Rio. Rio feels the helplessness in Celia's tone and suspects that she does not really want to marry Charles. Rio is determined to stop the wedding, and for him to do so, he must rely on Aishia's help. Rio still doesn't know why Aishia has always been by his side and helping him unconditionally, but he knows that Aishia is trustworthy. Soon, Charles is ready for Celia's wedding, and many onlookers are cheering for the grand wedding. Everyone has smiles on their faces. Only Celia shows a sad expression. Just as Charles is about to officially marry Celia, Rio appears. Rio single-handedly knocks down a large number of guards and rushes straight at Celia. He beats Charles up until he can't get up, then holds Celia hostage, forcing others not to approach him. Rio made a disguise beforehand, and only Celia would be able to recognize him. He uses magic to communicate with Celia in order to prevent others from hearing the two of them. Rio tells Celia that if she doesn't really want to marry Charles, he can take her with him. Everyone would think she is kidnapped and her father wouldn't have been implicated. In order to confirm Celia's true intentions, Rio gives her the choice of leaving or not. He hears Celia excitedly say, "Take me away," and immediately picks up Celia and flees the wedding scene. Rio quickly rendezvous Aishia and instructs Aishia to take Celia to a safe spot, and he is responsible for attracting the attention of the enemies. In his battle with his enemies, Rio encounters an extremely formidable opponent, Charles's older brother, the country's #1 swordsman. They fight for a long time, but neither could gain the upper hand. Finally, Charles's brother decides to end the fight with his special move. His sword emits a red glow that causes an explosion that destroys the whole street. However, after the smoke clears, there is no sign of Rio, and it is clear that Rio has found an opportunity to escape. By this time, Rio has come to the outskirts and finds Aishia and Celia. Celia hugs Rio excitedly, and at this moment, she realizes that she is finally free. Just as they are planning their next trip, several pillars of shining light suddenly descend from the sky. Aishia hurriedly tells Rio that she senses that the pillars of light are transmigrationers. Under the guidance of Aishia, Rio finds a group of slave traders. Rio rescues the 3 kidnapped transmigrationers from the slave traders, and Rio is surprised to find that his childhood best friend from the earth, Miharu, is also here among the 3. This unexpected encounter is destined to bring great changes to Rio's life. That's how this anime ends. There is a very peculiar setting in this anime. That is, all the people who come to another world from Earth have a bad time at first. Rio is reincarnated into an orphan and lives in the slums for many years. Latifa is reincarnated into an orc, becomes a slave to humans, and is tortured. 3 transmigrationers have just arrived in another world and are captured by slave traders. I used to fantasize about transmigrating to another world, but now it seems that the beautiful another world may be crueler than I thought. If it were you, would you be willing to transmigrate to an unknown another world? Welcome to leave your answer in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give me thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so more people can see it. Your support motivates me to update. Bye.